All right. Here we go. Let's time to get started here. So, thank you guys for joining in today. If this is your first time joining me, my name is Andrea Wilson. I am the broker and owner here at Brick House Realty. We're an independent real estate brokerage right here in the Cleveland area, servicing East Side, West Side, everywhere, all parts of Northeast Ohio. You can find us. So today I wanted to just kind of jump on. There's been some updates to some of the lending guidelines in a positive way, especially for people that want to get started investing in real estate. And so I wanted to bring on an expert on here to kind of give us an update what's going on. So I have Kate Heffernan joining in. So please go ahead and formally introduce yourself to everyone.
Awesome. Hey guys, I am Kate Heffernan. I am an originating branch manager at Liberty Home Mortgage. I have been originating for the last 12 years and I love it. So I would say that we definitely specialize in a little bit of harder loans, self-employed borrowers, investor loans. We do a ton of investor files. And my goal for all clients are just help you to get engaged in real estate wherever you're at, right? If it's going to be single family primary residence, if it's going to be someone who them and a sibling wants to buy in together and do an investment property, I really want to get people engaged in, the wealth of homeownership.
Yeah, I definitely thank you for sharing that, Kate. I definitely think that now is the time to buy. And that probably sounds so cheesy coming from a real estate agent and a mortgage professional. Like you probably always say it's a time to buy. Like, so people, I don't know if people will find it hard to take us serious because we say that and it sounds so salesy, I guess. But it's the truth.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I try to remind people as well is, it's always a good time to invest in the market, even if it wasn't real estate, right? It's always a good time to put money into your 401k. The only thing that changes is if you're going to do which type of investment, right? So you always want to be investing into your retirement, whether the market's up or down, and you're just going to change based off of the market, how you handle that, right? So, I mean, it's early and often is what I think. And the best way to diversify yourself from any risk is to, do it a lot.
Yeah. You said early and often. Are you meaning that some young person to get started early on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally, I've got an amazing financial advisor that has been working with me personally since I was like 22. And when I would get so nervous about losing money in the market or whatever, he would just remind me that like, you just want to do it early and often, right? If you look at graphs over a 1 month period, you're like 40% likely to lose money in the market. If you look at it over a 15-year period, it goes to 0, right? So I think people sit and they wait for good deals, but if you just get engaged in the market as soon as you can, your deal over the long term is going to be less likely to be a risk. So that's sort of my view.
I think that's important. I always tell people all the time that I always say that I have this baggage, right? In a good way. I have some good baggage. And what I'm meaning is I have a whole family. There's a total of 6 of us, right?
They're all so cute.
And so the reason I say get started before you have all of the baggage and overhead and everything is because I think that when you can buy early on and you can purchase like a multifamily property and kind of scale up from there, that is an awesome, secure place to be. And so while I'm saying I have baggage, and that's a lot harder for me because if I'm looking at even a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, most of those have either 2 bedrooms. On some occasions, they have 3 bedrooms, but in most cases, it's 2 bedrooms. I'm not living 6 people in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? So it makes it a more complicated and harder for me to achieve that goal of scaling through properties in that manner. And so if that was something that I would have done very, very early on, I could have been in a different place much quicker. And so this is the beauty of the guideline changes that came in, because especially if you already own a property. So let's kind of talk about that, because that's really our main
Yeah.
topic today. But this all touches base. It's all connected here when we're talking about buying a multifamily, kind of like that house hacking method. So let's talk about some of those guideline changes that has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So basically to break it all down, we got a couple guideline changes towards the beginning of the week, and they were like not good. It was like hard on investors, hard on clients. I was like, why would they do this with rates so high, right? That's just going to lower the market. But then we got like the big shebang, which was basically if you buy a 1-unit primary residence, so like a normal, you buy your house for yourself, right? That's going to be anywhere from 3 to 5% down. It's always been that number. And then if you're going conventional, you're buying a duplex, if you are under a certain income limit, you can do the 5% down, or it starts to kick you into the 15 to 25% down range. So people who wanted to do house hacking, which is essentially you live in a property, you must live there, and it can't be shady, move it to your mailing address, don't call me, period, right? So if you actually intend to live there, like you are going to move, you're looking for a house, right? You can go and you can buy a property, and you can then rent out the other units, and you can live in one of the units. So this is very common using FHA loans. So house hacking has always been FHA. However, FHA has a couple extra guidelines that come into place. One, you can only have one FHA loan with a couple exceptions. Two, if they just changed this, where if you're going to get a second FHA loan, you have to move 100 miles away, even if you're like selling off that other FHA loan, right? They really want to keep people from like double dipping down, right? They don't want you jumping from one house to another house, right? The other cool thing about the FHA product that made it difficult to get is something called a self-sufficiency test, meaning that if the property by the rentals, like the rental per unit, that property, so let's say it's 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, and then you live in one, the payment cannot be higher than 75% of the collected rents. So when rates are at 2, 3, 4%, no problem. You can always hit that, right? But if you're doing normal rents in a place like Cleveland, Ohio, it's really hard to hit self-sufficiency because you're not normally making a 25% rate of return all the time, right? Particularly if you're taking advantage of this product because of the low down payment. You're financing in a majority of the purchase price, right? It's going to make it harder to see that type of self-sufficiency test. So welcome the changes that came last week, which essentially are allowing you to not have the FHA as the only option to house hack, okay? So you can do a conventional loan, 1 to 4 units for 5% down. So there's still the option for 3% down on primary, 1 unit, but 5% down for everything else. As I said, I've been doing this a very long time. We've seen a lot of different types of products come and go, but this is absolutely the lowest LTV that I've ever seen. So this means you don't have to sell your house to move into a multifamily. This means that you can house hack without having to go FHA. I think a huge segment of our viewership is going to be impacted by this. If you have student loans in default, you cannot get a government loan, aka FHA. Okay. You can go conventional though, right? So a lot of people who have called me trying to house hack haven't been able to because they have something called a CAVERS hit, right? So student loan, other type of government debt, you can go conventional, right? As long as you have a qualifying credit score. So I think for my generation, for our generation, millennials, all the way to Gen Z, this is going to be huge because we just have different types of barriers. And does that answer some of the basics of the product? I feel like I was trying to set the scene, but does that sort of break down the big changes?
Absolutely. That is amazing that this creates a new opportunity for potential investors out there. And so, going back to starting this as early as possible, where you can benefit, because as years go on, values of homes tend to increase as well. So, starting earlier, the earlier you can buy, the cheaper the property is. So that way, when you're ready to buy that big house that you want, that nice house, that forever house, you already have this equity built into it because you purchased it at a lower price point early on. So putting 5% down, yeah, a lot of times people don't have that money because typically it was about 25% down people would have to put on that second property. And so putting 5% down is amazing. So let me ask you, is there a limit on conventional loans that a person can have?
So generally, if you're going to do a conventional loan, you can have up to 10 financed properties. So it's not necessarily conventional, it's just total. And then the reality is if you get to 10 financed properties, you probably should be looking like commercial or, because you're not really one individual investor at that point. If you have a 10 or 20 unit portfolio, there's probably better lending opportunities for you then.
And would they be able, say they want to keep doing this and they want 5 properties, they're buying their 5th property now, they can do the 5% down multiple times, or is this just kind of like a one and done? So you'd use the 5% one time and then the next time you'll have to put 25% down.
So it all comes down to occupancy, right? So ultimately I get a little bit shaky when people say they're going to like jump from one to the other.
Okay.
That's absolutely the point of the product, right? But mortgage fraud's a felony. You will go to jail for 25 years. It's worse than manslaughter. Make sure you actually intend to live there. Not a mailing address, not a cot in a room, right? You want to live there, because there's also the reality that they know that people are utilizing these products and they aren't living in these properties. And there's a lot of like door knocking going on right now, right? So this is an insane too good to be true option. But if you're trying to be like a true non-owner occupied investor and you're not willing to live in the home, then you shouldn't do it. But you could do it an unlimited amount of times, right? I mean, think about it this way. If you're someone who lives in like a New York City or a San Francisco, or even here in Cleveland, where we have a big percentage of our properties are multi-use, imagine if single family homes didn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. Of course you could use it multiple times because it's the type of house you're buying, right? Mm-hmm. So you can use it an unlimited amount of times. What you can't do is commit mortgage fraud.
Is there a time frame that they have to live in the house to kind of get past this?
So generally what I tell people is, 1 year is bare minimum, right? But the other thing is if you live there for 2 years, there's also some incentives for capital gain increase as well. Because if you live there for 2 years out of 5, I'm not a CPA, go see Irene Day at Hannah Financial. But like my house, I stayed at, I moved in, meant to stay there for like a year to 2 years. I stayed there 4 years, right? Because that's just sort of how life is, right? So they are wishy-washy on that guideline on purpose because they don't want people to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. It's just like a normal residential primary residence, right? We're not going to tell you how long you have to live there, but you have to intend to live there, right? Mm-hmm. I do advise 1 year at absolute minimum, 12 months worth of payments. But, if you're going to live there and it's your house, then it's not fraud. Just don't commit fraud and you're fine, right? Mm-hmm. There's no guide. The thing is about having like strict guidelines that like let you off the hook. Those don't exist in conventional, right? Mm-hmm. Just don't commit fraud. Like, if you're lying, if you're not lying. If it's going to be your primary residence and you're going to live there, don't worry about it. If it's not, then worry about it.
Right.
Because ultimately, think about it this way. You can buy a property, intend to live there, 8 months later, get a divorce. They're not going to force you to keep living there, right? But if you live there for a year, file your tax returns a year there, and the entire time you were living at your girlfriend's house, you weren't ever living there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a little bit stricter on that stuff, but it's really, really, really against the law. So
And we're definitely not trying to do anything against the law, but if we're talking to folks and they're young, so like I have a daughter who's 23, so if I'm telling her like, hey, I want you to get your first property here, she'll probably, she'll obviously live in it, and then a multifamily live in it. And then after a couple years, she'll be ready to kind of move on into that next space because,
Absolutely.
wanted to take advantage of the market. Whereas starting out, her income may only allow her to live in one area, or because of the price of homes, she may be trying to get closer to where I live or somewhere else, or
Right.
so just want to look at what all of her options are available. And I know that there's so many other people out there in that same situation.
Yeah. And I think that I try to protect myself and protect clients by making sure I'm really clear with the language, but ultimately that would be a perfect example, right? Another, I think, great example would be, going conventional as well. You can also have a non-owner occupied co-borrower, right? So if you have a non-owner occupied co-borrower, and let's say your kids are going to college, right? Buy a 4-unit, as long as they have a qualifying credit score, put them on the loan. They're going to be living there as the primary borrower. There might be a couple extra guidelines that come on with that, but that's one of the first things I think about too, right? If you've got a little bit of extra money, why not use some of that nest egg that you had for college, use it to put down on the house, and now all of a sudden you're netting $3,000 a month if you do a 4-unit, pay for college in cash, right? So I definitely think occupancy can be one of those things that you want to be smart about, but you just can't. Basically, think about what you want. Come to me. I'll explain it to you. But if we do what the guidelines, where the line is, right? That's where you get gray, right? So it's mostly like if something interests you, if you guys are interested in it, just talk to a loan officer, specifically me. But, they'll keep you on the right path, or they should.
So, okay, so we know the guidelines. Now, one of the biggest things what we find in our marketplace is some of those a little more distressed properties that need a little bit more repairs. The good thing on the conventional side, like when it has a point of sale, we can get past all of that. But what do you say for that a little more distressed property where they also will need some money for, some repairs in the house? Is there anything that can be done for that to give some extra funding for that?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
I'm out of pocket?
Absolutely. So I'm here in my really nice Tremont, single family home. But I will tell you, the way that I pay for this house is when I was 23 years old, I bought a $105,000 duplex that basically needed torn down in Tremont. So 105, I put 120 into it. I rolled that all into an FHA 203K loan, right? I lived there, as I said, for I think 4 years. So conventional is now doing renovation loans on 3 to 4 unit families. Like, it makes me so happy. I can't even tell you how happy it makes me.
Yes.
Because also FHA has an additional 1.75% fee that they charge on every single loan that doesn't get charged on conventional. So it's going to be a lower cost loan. Also, if you have an incredible credit score, right, which a lot of young people do, if you have to go FHA, you're going to normally end up paying higher fees, higher payment. So by being able to go conventional on a renovation loan, it's basically your purchase price plus the repairs, and that's going to be your acquisition cost. So if it's 100 plus 100, your acquisition cost is 200, and then you do your 5% off of the 200. Okay? We roll in that extra $100 to repair the property. Now, I will say on these loans, you are going to have a higher fee loan structure, right? You're going to have a contractor who's willing to give you all of your repairs that you need done. And conventional is just a little bit easier to renovation products than FHA.
What is that product called?
So there are a couple different things that you can do. Like the popular one is called home style.
Home style or dial?
Home style, like
Home
stylish.
style.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, guys, that is huge. Huge,
And
huge.
for 5% down, it's basically like conventional came out with an FHA loan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, that's going to be huge for a lot of folks that so in our area, I guess everywhere, but there is so many homes in our area, especially we have a lot of point of sale cities. And so the point of sale cities always becomes an issue for buyers who want to go FHA, but then it has a point of sale and the seller says, I'm not making any repairs, I'm selling as is. So we kind of get stuck a lot of times. Sometimes we're able to work through it, but in a lot of times, we kind of get stuck. So for there to be a conventional product on it and with the 5% down, this is huge.
So
Huge.
good. Yeah. And I think the thing to remember as well is they are trying to help. This is for first-time home buyers, really, I mean, it's for everybody, but they are trying to help the average American with affordability, right? And what they're realizing is that they're not able to do that with interest rates right now. How else can they do that, right? They can do that by maybe having some additional rental income that can help that person to make a payment, right? It's not right that 60% of homes in America are owned by investors, right? And I'm sure you'd say this as well, Andrea, that like since rates have increased so much, I've gone from about 20% investor loans to maybe about 50%, maybe not that high, but a really significant increase. So I'm really excited for this to re-engage young people, re-engage their parents and maybe co-signing for them, re-engage those people who were out looking for properties and just couldn't win because they had an FHA contract, right? So I think this is going to be great for affordability and just the American homeowner in general.
So one last question here. So rates on average we're at about what in the marketplace?
I don't think you want to know. I will say today was a pretty good day after the market being closed last week. I mean, we're high sevens, low eights.
Do you think that it's going to increase even more?
I mean, the Fed has specifically come out and said that they're not going to lower them. So I have other beliefs regarding that situation and other ways that we could be handling this that I will keep to myself. But I don't foresee any real relief in a major way. But I also can't imagine going into a presidential election year. I mean, it would be political suicide. So I have to imagine there's going to be a rate decline in the coming year, but I don't know.
I bring this up to you guys not to scare you, but to make a further point here. Should it stop people from should the rates stop people from purchasing now? Because sometimes we hear people saying, well, I'm going to wait for rates to go down. Do you honestly believe people?
Here's what I would say, right? Is that I had clients who were doing almost $100,000 over asking in appraisal gaps. Clients literally bringing $50,000 to $70,000 cash money that the home was not worth. What is the rate on that money, right? Just throwing away money to get into a house, right? So as we see less buyers and we see less competition, right? I would much rather have a client paying $100 or $200 more a month than paying $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 over asking. I mean, it was minimum. You'd see a house listed for $220, go for $310. So I still think it's a great time for sellers as well. I mean, I think it's just we're still in a little bit of a seller's market. It's definitely not a huge buyer's market. But I mean, that was insane. And it's cooled off, right? And when rates come back down, my fear is that it's going to come back. And you're not going to be competing with Susie Luhu, your neighbor, right? You're going to be competing. What we realize now is all those cash buyers weren't, mommies and daddies buying homes for their kids. It was huge corporations buying all the single family homes in America. So during this respite we have right now, where there's not as much competition on those properties, we need to be buying homes as people.
Thank you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, oftentimes people will ask, "Oh, I'm going to wait for the rates to go down," or "When do you think the rates will go down?" The right time to buy is absolutely now. If rates go down, you know, you have this loan for a couple of years, rates go down, you can refinance if it makes sense, because you still need to look at the numbers. If it makes sense, you can refinance later on. But if the value of the homes continue to increase, you will save nothing by doing that. You can actually end up paying even more at that point. So you have some seasoned veterans here in this real estate business. All you have to do is reach out. There's the phone number scrolling below. And how can they reach out to you, Kate?
You can follow me at Lala Loneland. There's links in my bio if you want to set up a call. And you could just do that, probably.
You can also follow her over on Instagram at that Lala Lone Land as well. She always gives great videos and tips and updates like this one in the marketplace. So what I will say, if you are in the marketplace, you're out shopping, make sure you work with someone that is a seasoned veteran in this business so that they can help you maneuver through all of the everything that's going on, right? So Kate is going to be on her game. She knows about these loan changes. She knows how to make it work for you. Not everyone is going to do that. And so you want to make sure you someone who understands those guidelines. So thank you, Kate, for joining in with me. And
All right.
talk to you guys next time.